Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Awaken the World. We are live on this Monday night, the 30th of August already. 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on the Awaken the World group page. Engage the silent drive. Is that being cryptic? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Believe it or not, it's actually a line out of a movie that I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed the book even better. Maybe some of you will figure it out and be able to figure that one out. But anyway, so yeah, a couple nice days of kayaking. There's a big 2,000 plus hectare controlled burn going on about 15 kilometers away from here. So it looks rather nice out, but there's a giant dark plume of smoke obscuring most of the sunlight. There's been ash falling pretty much the most of today. But such as it is, right? I mean, that's just the way things go. At least it's not, raining fire right now. So before we get too deep into this, let me express my love for each and every one of you. No matter what's going on right now, you're in exactly the right place. You couldn't be in a better place. And a lot of people think about this and they think, well, okay, so if I choose door A, that's perfect. But what if I choose door B? That's also perfect. Huh, interesting. And that's the beauty of it, is it doesn't matter which door you ever pick. It doesn't matter what choice you make. That choice is going to be made perfect within your journey. And you will only benefit from it ultimately in terms of your growth. Now, this doesn't make things easy, and I had, conversed with Kelly a little bit about this earlier today, about the idea that you have to understand and still be able to have great compassion for where people are at. Because even if you have that higher view, you're still very much here. And you have a journey here in this physical realm. And that journey is important and valuable. And it should be taken lightly, and yet it's not to be taken lightly. So one of the things that really can help us out when it comes to our journey and the things that we may perceive on our journey, and boy, it's really hard. I notice so many people struggle with this idea of judging. Everything has to be judged as good or bad. And, as I've said many times, when you look back at your life, most of the things that if not all of the things that you've judged as bad, turned out to be really, really good. And a lot of the things that you thought were wonderful at the time maybe weren't so wonderful after all. And we have to remember that judgment we make is a fairly automated reflex for most. It's been going on for thousands of years. So you really got to be willing to step back from that judgment, from that reaction that you're going to have. And that's where engaging the silent drive comes into. And what I mean by that is your natural state of being when you're sitting back and observing your existence. That position of the watcher. And that's what you are, that watcher. The egoic sense of self, that which provides a running commentary, is only a small part of you. And it's really hard to put this into words. It is you, but it is certainly not the real you. It's like part of the pseudo you. It's a you that would change just like you would shed skin. And even though it's immensely valuable, It doesn't have any bearing on what and who you are in any real meaningful way outside of being the vehicle and vessel for you to have different types of experience. And you will experience various types of physical vessels throughout the whole of this creation over an immeasurable amount of time. And that's the fun in this. So, when I'm talking about engaging the silent drive, what I'm really talking about is ceasing the endless reactions. And this is where most people, even if they're in the process of raising their own consciousness, and it is a never ending process, there's no high limit to reach that you can say, okay, now I can sit here on my cloud, and no, it's never ending growth. So no matter wherever you are in that journey, we'll find places that due to the external circumstances, due to a lack of our own steadying our inner being, perhaps, that we find ourselves thrown about and we become reactive. And what it really means to react is to go ahead and take the exact same actions you took the last time something like this appeared. And the funny thing is that your egoic self doesn't really care whether the actions produced a good or bad result. That is not in its thinking process at all. What is in its process is comparative, because that's what your ego sense of self really is a comparative engine. So your egoic sense of self will scan what it considers to be the past, identify a similar set of circumstances, a similar environmental setup, and then literally bring up that old script again. And plug that card in, and you, as a conscious entity, will literally go to sleep. Your awareness in that present moment, if you're not very careful, will be subsumed by the old program, the reaction. Reacting out again an old script. And you will react out that old script, and depending on the prior results of that, you may or may not see the same results this time. And we tend to get into these cycles where we become very reactive, and eventually what we do is we find ourselves in a position where we just want to hide. Because it seems to us that everything around us is causing these reactions from within us. And that is where cultivating that space, cultivating that silence. And, you know, a lot of people have said to me, well, it sounds a lot like disassociation. And, you know, that word really doesn't have negative or positive connotations, although a lot of people have tried to apply to it negative connotations. It is a disassociation, indeed. On the one hand, you are disassociating from the illusion that you are simply your mind and body. You are separating yourself, and you are stepping back into that deeper and larger association, that of your true being, that does not speak, but takes in everything. And if you pay attention, you'll notice a very ephemeral, slight twist of a grin that can't quite be seen. So this concept that we have, that the silence is the truth of who you are. If you ever want to know if you're totally present, And at first, as soon as you seek that presence or notice you're in that present moment, you're going to be tossed out of it. You'll notice that brain start up again. Don't fret. Don't get upset. Don't worry about that. Don't misconstrue that. Allow it to happen and observe it. What you're really learning to do, because in truth, you will never silence the mind. Very, very few people, one in, I don't know, about 100 million, ever get to the point where the mind is almost silent for the vast majority of their day, providing almost no commentary whatsoever. And I can say that in, 30 years of practice, I'm still only at about 75, 80%. And it really doesn't matter because that's not a goal, and it's not something you have to worry about. What you're really doing is learning to sit back and observe the whole energetic uprising of what's going on in the mind. To not fall into it. So, you can imagine that instead of being right in the volcano, you're going to sit back just on the other side of the lip of the volcano. And the volcano, of course, is your ego. And when you have an interaction with a human being, another human being, and you feel in some way that they are triggering something in you, you will have the opportunity to see things clearer if you can sit back at that lip. And the more awareness you put into it, the more slow motion it will appear to happen. So you will notice the lava beginning to bubble up. You will see how your egoic sense of self is beginning to get incensed. Right? So someone is pushing your buttons, someone is triggering you. And you can watch that from that place, and it will appear to be happening in slow motion. And you'll realize in that moment that you have a choice to go ahead and commit to fall right into the volcano and get yourself blown to kingdom come with the rest of your egoic sense of self, or to simply put your hand over the volcano and say, you know what, I'm not going to react to this. I am a new me now. I am not the me that was then. And this is the biggest thing that we often miss sight of, is that all of our reactions by necessity are based on less conscious versions of ourselves. Think about that for a minute. And this is why you have to be willing to forgive yourself. And in reality, I really don't even like that word, because there's nothing to forgive. You've done nobody any wrong. But you're scooting along now. You're feeling high about where you are at life and where you are in your level of consciousness, and you're feeling this deep spiritual connection to all things. And all of a sudden, wham! Cats are taking off. Out of nowhere, something blindsides you, and you react. You don't catch it, and you react. Well, the reaction isn't coming from the you today. The reaction isn't even you. But it's certainly not coming from the you as you are at this level of consciousness. Your reaction is coming from another you that used to exist, that's long gone. Even yesterday is a long time ago. Your reaction is based on an old, less conscious version of yourself. And what it really is a leftover vibration of a vibration that used to be resident there. And anything that pulls that vibration back into focus again, will cause it to briefly manifest itself. And when you're willing to put your hand on the volcano, when you're willing to say, you know what, that was the old way that I would react. You're actually able to watch the machinations of the ego. You're actually able to see the story that's being concocted. Seeing the old way of reaction. And I admit, there's times when you'll see it and you'll shrug and you'll go, what the hell? I'm going that way anyways, just because I'm having a day. But you'll do so consciously as a alongside participant, not somebody who's totally unconscious. We all have this ability. This isn't something you have to practice that much, although I just recommend you start doing it for yourself whenever you feel like it. So, with me, it's quiet. And as I said to Kelly, a lot of people don't understand that despite the fact that I personally hold no ill in my body, no thorn of my past journey, I've come to peace with every aspect of my being, there is still that memory, that reaction. And, heavy thumping bass, a lot of loud noise triggers for me a type of, auditory PTSD based on the experiences I had in those sort of environments. And because I keep and maintain a state of awareness, I have that space, that silence to look and see what's occurring and to choose. And this is a gift that you have, is in that state of being, you literally can override your egoic sense of self with no thought, no word, nothing at all that would be obvious to any sensor, any device, only the intent that exists behind thought to simply keep looking at it. And when we keep looking at anything that's come up in our mind, and we should never turn away, when we turn away from something, believe it or not, we're lending it a type of energy. We're allowing it to land within our energetic being, and it becomes like a blotch on our energetic field. And it has a dissonant energy, and that blotch will begin to spread and grow. We need to face every last bit of those things that well up from within us. But in that place of silence, in that stillness, where you simply choose to observe all that's arising, it dissipates. It's only a flare-up. It's not an actual huge volcanic explosion. It's just a flare-up. And when we watch, we will see that flare-up, and we can allow that flare-up to occur and dissipate. And here's the joy of it. As it dissipates, it's losing its ability to re-flare up. So if you have different things in your life that you're normally very reactive to, that you're not acting out of that place of silence and stillness, but you're falling unconscious and you're diving into an old habit, an old activity, an old response, a reaction, you need to look really closely and see where you're not willing to face those aspects of yourself. There's a reason why life keeps bringing this up. And it is not to torture you. It's not to torment you. It's to help you become free of it. And one of the best and easiest ways to become free of it is to be able to sit back in that place of inner stillness, inner silence. and simply watch what arises in the mind. You can play with it. You can choose to let it go and see how that feels. You can choose to hold on to it and see how that feels. You have infinite choice. At any moment, you can forgive. And really, as I said, I don't even like that word. For me, it's choose to forget that I ever perceived that that person did me wrong. To simply understand the truth of the experience. And the truth is that anyone that perceives to wrong us is, in fact, not only wronging themselves, but crying out for help. They're desperate or confused or fearful or guilt-ridden. And in that place of silence, we don't react. So how do we get to that place of silence? Well, imbue it within your environment. I do not disagree with that. There's some masters who would say, well, you should be able to sit in downtown New York and be just as still. And I would say, until you are able to sit in New York downtown and be just as still, I suggest here's some ways you can practice and help build that. And that is to create a silent, safe place within your home, whether it's a room or, fortunately for us, the whole house, where we live without a background of noisy music, without TVs on, voices are kept low. We come close to each other when we speak to each other. Very rarely do we yell at each other from across the room or from floor to floor. So you can create this space in your home. And because we are a reflection of everything, and until you reach such a point where the outside environment can no longer have an effect on you, it really helps to make a space, even if it's just that one room, that's conducive to that silence. A place where you can come where there is nothing to trigger the mind. And I really recommend, and you don't have to do anything fancy. Heck, you could go down to the secondhand store and buy a really nice lightweight bathrobe and use that as your meditation robe. Have a piece of clothing that you keep separate. Clothing that you don't wear anywhere else or do anything else with except to meditate in or to drape over yourself when you meditate in. It could be as simple as a small little lightweight blanket. That piece of clothing becomes part of a ritual, part of an outward expression of what's going on inside. And this is all part of that extension of that silence, engaging that silent drive. So in the process of taking part in the ritual, you are naturally brought into a silent state of being. Now, is that silence devoid of thought? No, it's not. There are times when that silence is replete with thought. But I am not giving the thought my attention. I'm giving the silence my attention. Another way to think about this, and a great way to practice it, is to look for and fall into that space, that little tiny gap, that pause at the bottom of your breath. That's something that Wayne Dyer used to call it. Come to think of it, he used to say, getting into the gap. And that gap is that little space between two thoughts. And we can think of that in the terms of breath, of that minuscule pause. And you can experience that pause with me right now. So for a moment, just close your eyes, relax, take a deep, comfortable breath in, and exhale all the air. And notice that at the bottom of the exhale, right before you inhale, It's a tiny space. And that's all you have to do is look at that space. You don't have to do anything with that space. You don't have to try and enlarge the space. You don't have to make the space any bigger. All you have to do is see it. So again, we take a nice deep breath in. Another really easy practice while you're doing this on the in breath and on the out breath, just to remind yourself that you are not the mind and you are not the body. Breathing in, I am not the mind. Breathing out, I am not the body. This will not only help increase the silence, but it will help increase the space between you and pain, between you and perceived suffering. It will give you that opportunity to view it from that higher state of self, from that place of an overview, from that larger picture. That's it, that's all. Simple video tonight. We'll keep it relatively short. You are truly loved. This place of stillness and oneness and wholeness and peace and tranquility and pure love is what you are. Everything else is just icing on the cake. Have a good night. Take care. Namaste.